Caravaggio The Supper, Emmaus. What does it mean to look directly at someone and still fail to recognize them? This is the question at the heart of Caravaggio's The Supper, Emmaus. At first, we see an ordinary meal, a table, bread, fruit, a roasted bird, travelers gathered inside a modest room. Nothing here appears distant enough to belong to legend. Nothing seems elevated enough to belong to heaven. And yet, the man seated before us is the resurrected Christ in the middle. His disciples have traveled beside him. They have listened to him. They have shared the road with him. But only now, in the breaking of bread, do they finally recognize who he is? Caravaggio does not paint the moment after recognition. He paints recognition itself, that sudden movement, when the familiar becomes sacred, when uncertainty becomes knowledge, when ordinary life opens and reveals something sublime. For me, the most important element in this painting is light. Look at the shadow behind of the crest. Look at the shadow of the man who is standing right beside the crest on the left, and look at the shadow of the third table, the third plate. It's amazing. The light is often the first witness of the truth on this table. Objects can deceive us, faces can remain unfamiliar, words can be misunderstood, but in Caravaggio's world, light reveals. It does not simply allow us to see the event, it announces that something has been seen. Christ is not surrounded by a golden halo. The room does not open toward heaven. There are no clouds, no angels, and no idealized architecture. Instead, holiness enters through illumination. The divine appears inside the material world, on human skin, on bread, on fabric, on imperfect fruit. This is why light becomes a symbol of recognition. The disciples do not merely recognize Christ, the entire painting seems to recognize him with them. Look at the two disciples. The man on the left pushes himself violently from his chair. We can almost hear the wooden legs scraping against the floor. His body has understood before his mind has found the words. The figure on the right throws his arm outward. His gesture forms the shape of a cross, while one hand seems to extend beyond the painted surface and into our space. He does not simply express surprise. He opens the scene towards us. His arms seem to ask, "Do you see him now?" And more importantly, would you have recognized him? This is where Caravaggio becomes theatrical. But theatrical does not mean false, it means carefully positioned. Everybody acts like a sentence here, and every hand becomes punctuation, and every face records a different stage of understanding. The innkeeper remains standing, watching, but perhaps not fully seeing. He is physically closest to Christ, yet spiritually the most distant. The disciples are overwhelmed, Christ remains calm, and we standing on the invisible fourth side of the table complete the composition, and there's an empty place for us. The Caravaggio has not painted a religious scene for us to observe. He has staged an encounter in which we must participate. Now please look at the Christ. He appears unexpectedly young. He has no beard. His face is very soft, almost unfamiliar. This was one of the reasons the painting could feel controversial. Caravaggio refuses to make recognition easy. If Christ looked exactly as the audience expected, the painting would lose its central tension. The disciples must discover him, and so must we. Caravaggio's sacred figures do not belong to a distant, polished universe. They enter rooms that resemble our own. They sit beside ordinary people. Their clothes carry weight. Their hands are real. Their emotions are immediate. This is why Caravaggio is admired and criticized. He brought religion closer to human experience, but in doing so, he disturbed the safe distance between the holy and the ordinary here. So he suggested that the sacred might appear not only in ideal beauty but in face of someone we could meet in the street. That was powerful and it was polemical. So now, look at the basket of fruit, please. It projects dangerously over the edge of the table. It shadows, makes us aware of how close it is to failing, like falling. And the fruit is abundant, but it is not perfect. The apple is marked, and the figs are split. The grapes are beginning to age. The leaves are drying. Beauty and decay occupy the same basket. This is more than decorative still life. The fruit speaks about time. Ripeness is already moving toward decline. Life contains its own ending. The meal is nourishing, yet mortality is present at the table. So some details may suggest Christian ideas of sacrifice, resurrection, and the passage from the death into life. But even without reducing every fruit to a fixed code, the basket gives us a clear human truth. Everything living is temporary, and precisely because it is temporary, it becomes precious. The basket also enters our space, and like the disciple's hand, it crosses the boundary between painting and reality. It could fall toward us. The scene is no longer safely contained. Recognition has consequences. Once truth reaches the edge of the world, we cannot pretend that we did not see it. This is where the sublime appears. The sublime is not simply something beautiful. The beauty invites us closer. The sublime unsettles us. It makes us feel that ordinary reality has suddenly become larger, more powerful, and less controllable than what we imagined. So in this painting, the sublime does not arrive through mountains or storms or vastness of the nature. It arrives at dinner through a gesture, through a bread, through light striking a face. Caravaggio makes life sublime by showing that the infinite may reveal itself inside the finite. A small room can contain revelation, a simple meal can contain eternity, a human face can carry the shock of an entire spiritual world. So we should also remember when this painting was created in 1601, religious painting in Catholic Europe was not simply decoration. Like images taught, persuaded, moved emotions, and helped religious stories become immediate to people who encountered for them. Caravaggio understood this power really perfectly, but he did not teach through distance. He taught through presence. He did not say, "Look at what happened long ago." He said, "Look, it's happening now. Look, it's really happening now." So from Rome to Spain, from Italy to later generation of painters across Europe, Caravaggio's dramatic realism and forceful use of darkness and light changed the language of the painting. But we must be careful when extending this history toward the Ottoman world. We cannot confidently claim that Ottoman viewers encountered this specific painting or interpreted it in one shared way. The Ottoman Empire contained Muslim, Orthodox Christian, Jewish, Armenian, and other communities, each carrying distinct visual traditions and relationships. The sacred imagery, Rome and the Vatican developed one powerful language of Catholic representation. Orthodox traditions preserved another language, so especially through the theology and presence of icons. So the Ottoman world governed across these overlapping religious cultures, but it did not become a single visual audience. So the most meaningful comparison is not to pretend that all civilizations read the painting identically. It is to recognize that every civilization asks a related question: how can the invisible become present in the visible world? Caravaggio's answer was light. A museum wants this painting because it preserves more than a biblical episode. It preserves a revolution in seeing. It shows how composition can make the spectator part of a story, how realism can intensify belief rather than weaken it, and how the ordinary can carry the sacred. How a painted moment can remain psychologically alive more than 4 centuries later. A collector would not simply acquire an image, they would acquire a turning point in European painting. A gallery would display it because the work changes the room around it. The figures do not remain inside the frame, they occupy the space before it. And every visitor becomes for a moment for the next person seated at the table. Perhaps this is why the faces are so sharply present. Caravaggio wants to approach everyone. He does not begin with the theology as an abstract system. He begins with the human face. Very iconic. Surprise, confusion, recognition, silence. So, we may belong to different centuries, cultures, or beliefs, but we know what it means to certainly understand something that had been in front of us all along. That experience is timeless, and perhaps this painting is timeless for the same reason. It is not only about recognizing Christ, it is about the difficulty of recognizing truth. When truth arrives in unexpected form, the innkeeper sees a suggest, and the disciple sees a revelation. We see a painting, but the Caravaggio quietly asks us whether seeing is ever enough. Because the greatest distance in this room is not between one person and another. It is the distance between looking and recognizing. And Caravaggio crosses that distance with light, because in this painting, light is not merely what makes reality visible. Light is the moment reality becomes true. Thank you very much.